Okay, yes, I am Leah. I am not Chloe. I really encourage folks to take note of Chloe's name because I'm going to do my best to present. She just had a baby, so she can't be here. But please contact her if you have further questions about her work that I'm going to try and honor here. So Emma very kindly just kind of went over this for us about humpback whale migration and in the Southern Ocean, and the ones coming past Fiordland are coming down to Antarctica to feed in the summertime, coming along the Fiordland coast. And now we know that, from Eastern Australia as well as New Caledonia breeding grounds, breeding areas. And so this is kind of what we understand about humpback whale migratory corridors in New Zealand. A lot of this information was understood from whaling records, so from actual hunting of humpbacks past New Zealand. So since then there hasn't, obviously there's Emma's work and the collaborative work with Chloe and everybody, but there hasn't been as much of a good understanding of where these where these humpbacks are coming from. So for Chloe's thesis, her aims were to investigate the timing as well as the place where the humpbacks are hanging out in Fiordland, describe their behavior as far as, how long are they hanging out in Fiordland, what are they doing, for example, foraging, maybe, and identifying what may be influencing their fine-scale habitat selection, which was a question that we just got, so good leading question. So to do this, as was actually talked about just now, there's some visual encounter data from 2008 to 2020, and this is coming from both dedicated surveys, so surveys for humpbacks specifically, also the dolphin surveys that were occurring within the fjords, but also from tourism operators. Many of you come from that sector, so those data are being used in this thesis, so you should feel pretty proud about that. And also public sightings contributed to DOC. Another data source that was added as part of this thesis was some passive acoustic monitoring that was occurring in Tamatea Dusky in 2022. So we look into that here as well. Emma also very kindly went over photo identification of humpback whales. So with the sightings that have photographs associated that are good enough to have some identifying marks, you can use the underside of the fluke as well as the dorsal fins. So you can see Chloe went through a lot of photos, and it's not explicitly said here, but she did have a lot of, at least a handful of interannual resights, so animals seen in different years, as well as sightings within a season in different spaces as well. And also there were some indications of foraging, both by seeing these animals with their mouths open, so baleen is exposed in that top left photo. We talked about the pink poop. We have lunge feeding behavior, as well as the extended pleats of the animal. So that's like its bottom jaw extends when it's feeding. And then also evidence of some prey species in the area when the animals are doing this behavior. So looking at the sightings reported in these data streams, it seems like we had more humpbacks seen in the spring by the larger tourism vessels compared to the summer and compared to the smaller vessels. And also on the right graph, you can see that's just compared to all the seasons, seeing more in the spring. So in the spring, that's when they're coming down from the breeding grounds, coming along the Fiordland coast and heading down to Antarctica. So seeing more of them on that migration pattern. This is a map of all the encounters. So on the left side are the public sightings, the small vessels and the large vessels. On the right are the tourism data from 2009 to 2022. So you can see that there is a lot of vessel traffic up in Milford, so quite a few dots up there. Many in Patea, all the way up even, looks like to the islands, and then around Tamatea Dusky, but also on the outer coast where these vessels are going. So that's an important part to remember, is that these tourism vessels are seeing sightings in their regular pattern of where they go, which is often in these spaces, but also along the coast. And then this is some modeling that Chloe did with the dedicated whale surveys as well as the dolphin survey data, so those research trips, and seeing where some of those hotspots are occurring for detected visual sightings of humpback. So the hotspots seem to be, again, along the outer coast as well as in Tamatea, but you can see also like some other spots showing up where there's a higher likelihood to encounter humpbacks within the fjords. Moving on to the acoustics aspect of this thesis, Chloe looked at the acoustic recorder put out right in the Talmoana Five Fingers Reserve, and this was in 2022, so February 20th through the end of the year. This is what humpback calling and acoustic sounds looks like. So Chloe went through, and I would play them, but again, I don't think they're really going to work. And Jenny hopefully can help with that. But there was, with the detector, there was over 46,000 possible detections that Chloe went through and validated, and 15% of those were true positives, so that helps improve the algorithm. So looking at the acoustics data by month, you can see that there was way more acoustic detections in June, which is the autumn. So this is a different story from what the visual sightings are saying. Visual sightings had higher in the spring on the southern migration. Here we're having the acoustics picking up the northern migration. So this is kind of coming into the pros and cons of both approaches and how together we can get the full picture. So it seems that it's likely that the animals are migrating further offshore, further afield from where visual effort goes. And so another part of her thesis is looking inside the fjords and modeling similar to what other folks have done in fjord systems up in British Columbia, so looking at different aspects of a fjord to see what might be driving the fine-scale habitat use. So looking at things like depth, mixed layer depth of the water column, distance to the entrance, distance to land. And she modeled both inside the fjord habitat and outside the fjord habitat. The outer coast, the model didn't seem to be as clear as to what may be explaining their presence. So that's an ongoing investigation. But in summary, distinct seasonal variation in humpback whale detection on the coast and in the fjords, so both in terms of sightings and in terms of acoustics. There are certain areas that have higher probability of encountering humpbacks within Fiordland. Humpback whale presence within the fjords is associated with habitat variables that can be indicators of productivity, but as Emma actually alluded to in her Q&A, was that there just needs to be more dedicated research into that foraging question. And it does seem with the resites of individuals that there's some evidence of some migratory fidelity. Again, something that Emma actually touched on, which is this inherited culture, but also this individual kind of preference or whatever the individual want to kind of do the same thing between years. All right. There you go. Thank you.